Take it away.
Well, we're back. Episode 17.
Whoa. Cheers.
So today we're going to talk about a topic that I feel like we haven't even nowhere near touched, but
At all.
yeah, it's something that I think comes to mind. And so today I want to talk about just, the difference about being raised on love versus being raised on survival. And, kind of how that looks with life and in life.
Yeah. What does that mean exactly?
I think to me, when it's like you're raised on love versus raised on survival, being raised on love is more so, in my opinion, just like, you were raised in a home where things were pretty much like normal, easy, steady pace, steady flow. You didn't really go through maybe as many hardships or trauma, childhood trauma, just dealing with certain issues like family dynamics. Life was kind of just overall normal for the most part. And I think being raised on survival could mean a lot of different things, but I think just going through a lot in your childhood, that in your adult life, it does affect you, and you're maneuvering through it and you're doing the best you can do. So I feel like a lot of us, of course, you're raised on one or the other, and it just kind of shows up in different ways, I think, at the age that we are now.
Yeah. I feel like it's a very complicated, like convoluted, complex question. Because I feel like when you ask the question, were you raised on love or raised on survival? I feel like at the very, very surface level, you would picture somebody that grew up in a 2-parent household in suburbia for love.
Correct.
Right? And on the flip side, you would maybe picture somebody that grew up in the hood with a single parent on food stamps or whatever.
Right.
But I feel like it's a little more complex than that, because you could have grown up with more unfortunate financial circumstances, but still be raised on love.
True.
You know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely. You're very right.
So I feel like it's like complex from that standpoint. Like certain things are done out of love, even though the circumstances are maybe unfortunate. So like for me, my dad wasn't around. And so I was raised primarily by my mom and her being a single mother. And so I'm sure for her, having to raise a child on her own, in a sense, that's like survival.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
She has to provide for her and provide for me.
Right.
But she worked really hard and did everything she could. And I'm sure there was times where maybe financially she didn't feel in the best place, or maybe she didn't even have it, but I never felt it. And so, she made a lot of sacrifices, and I feel like my mom didn't really start like living her life for herself until maybe like I was in college.
Wow.
So I feel like all of those sacrifices and working hard and all of that was done out of love.
Yeah.
But also like to survive, like, you know what I mean? So I feel like the question is kind of complicated in a sense.
No, it really is. Because of course, like dictionary definition, it is exactly what you said.
Right.
Raised in the suburbs versus raised in the hood. But you're right. I mean, you could be raised either way and, kind of have the other situation. You know what I mean? So that's almost like, I feel like everyone's interpretation of that is different.
Yeah. Because also financially, as long as you have what you need, a roof over your head and food on the table and clothes on your back, it's like, okay, but what else?
Right.
Because there's a lot of people that maybe grew up in the white picket fence and didn't need or want for anything, but they did not grow up on love.
Correct.
So it's interesting.
No, it really is. It really is. And I feel like the older we get, you start to see like who generally was raised around love or with love and who was not. But it's interesting.
I feel like as we get older, it's very easy to tell in dating because people don't know how to show love or be vulnerable. but sometimes they don't even know how to receive it.
Right.
They feel uncomfortable receiving it. And a lot of people kind of go into like fight or flight mode, or like hyper independence for sure, I think is a thing. And that's definitely a pretty big indication of, they were raised on survival. Or yeah, I definitely think a lot of people's parents emotionally can hammer home like, stop all that crying, it's not the end of the world, da 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 da. And that is being raised on survival, and I think it translates into people becoming adults that aren't emotionally available, or are not in tune with their own feelings, or don't know how to process their own feelings because they're used to just disregarding them.
No, yeah. Right.
So.
No, I definitely agree with that. And that was the whole reason why I wanted to have the conversation, because I feel like I usually talk about this topic, the love versus survival, when I'm dating a man, because I feel like it does come up a lot. When you talk about the way that you grew up versus maybe the man you're dating, and you just kind of realize, sometimes your upbringings are totally different, or just the way you see life is different, like everything. And kind of when I started breaking the love versus survival down, it just, it started to make a lot more sense to me. And I feel like a lot of people don't have this conversation, but I feel like it does need to be had, because I think once you can discover, was someone raised on love versus survival, I think it becomes a lot more easier to understand who they are and how to just kind of, work with them and coexist.
Yeah.
Because there are definitely major differences.
Yeah. How do you feel like you were raised?
I feel like I was definitely more so raised on love, regardless of my parents, the way my upbringing was. I think there was always love. And so for me, I notice when someone is not raised on that, just based off of like our interactions and just talking to them, the way they handle things, situations or circumstances, things of that nature. So I think the way the outlook I think I have on life and the way I handle situations or conflict is a lot different than someone else. And I was kind of reading on it, and it said that basically those of us that are raised on love, we are way more forgiving. And I'm like, that is very interesting, because I think I am so forgiving, but I think with survival, it's like you can't think like that. You're just like, no, because you're just so used to just being like tunnel vision, like I'm just in it to win it, like screw up everything else. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I need to probably look more into this, because I'm like, that probably makes a lot of sense why I'm just truly the way I am.
But I also feel like if you're raised on survival, do you even really have time to feel sadness, whatever? Like, you're worried about how you're going to survive.
Literally. Yeah.
How you're going to live, how you're going to eat next, whatever, how you're going to stay safe. You don't have time for feelings, I would assume.
Right. No, for sure not.
And then people get older and they haven't dealt with that. They haven't processed that, whatever. And so I think feeling vulnerable, or allowing yourself to be open and vulnerable and potentially to be hurt, is just not a thing.
Right.
Or just wildly uncomfortable. Or even, I feel like, to your point, in dating, sometimes if people allow themselves to be vulnerable, it's like they almost self-sabotage. Because feeling vulnerable does not equate to feeling safe.
Right. At all.
And even I find myself doing it, like, I'm like, this just isn't going to work. Because and I was just having this conversation today, but how like the easy way out is to just not feel, to not get close to people, because then you can't be hurt. But that's not the way to live.
Right. It's really not. It's really not. It's not at all. And I think we just try to do better than what we were doing in the past. And it's definitely hard, It's very hard.
That's why I'm a big advocate of therapy, because I don't think, we didn't ask to be born, right? So you're not responsible, I don't think, like for your upbringing or maybe the things that happened to you. But at the end of the day, I think you are responsible for your own healing, unfortunately. And that means doing the work to heal from things that weren't even your fault.
Right.
But I do think it is a responsibility that we all should take one, for our own betterment, but two, like breaking generational curses.
Absolutely.
Eventually, and those are some of the things that I thought about when I started therapy, was like, one day I'm going to get into another relationship and I don't want to bring any of this crap into that one.
Right.
Or one day I'm going to be a mother and I want to be the best version of myself for my future child.
Right.
And I feel like that's where cycles never break, is when people don't do the work. Mm-hmm. And I do think our generation especially is starting to do the work. Like,
for sure,
the stigmas around therapy is starting to kind of, people are starting to get more open to it.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and I really do, like, even Gen Z, I'll give them their props too. Like, I feel like they're, you know, trying to make changes as well. So I do feel like our generation especially is trying to break some of those norms. Maybe things that have been normalized that should not be.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. I think we are trying a lot harder to, you know, create healthy relationships and families. And I'm like, that's just so beautiful. But yeah, I think more than ever, I have so many friends that are in therapy or have gone through therapy or things like that. Mm-hmm. So it's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or even like think about like, you know, friends that may be like bipolar or on antidepressants, things like that. Like, I feel like those are things people are even more open about.
Yeah.
Than what they used to be. Like, before it was frowned upon. Now it's like, honestly, girl, like, I'm glad that you know, discovered that and you're working towards, you know, getting the help that you truly need. So I love that as well.
Yeah, because imagine the amount of people that grew up with parents or grandparents that had some sort of mental illness, bipolar, whatever, that went completely undiagnosed and completely unchecked because of the negative stigma around therapy.
Yeah.
And especially being Black, we have an extra layer of trauma in our community, on top of the world is just hard in general.
Yeah.
Life is hard in general.
Yeah.
There's a lot of trauma in our community, and a lot of things that we just deal with on the day-to-day, and that we just push down or don't deal with, and it's never going to get better unless you deal with it. I remember when I started therapy, because I work remote, when I started, I was talking to her once a week. Mm-hmm. And I would talk to her at like 1 p.m. on like Wednesdays or something. I don't remember. And logging back on to work at 2 o'clock, no. Like, it's physically exhausting to have to tap into things that you didn't even know about or didn't even realize, or things that you've completely buried, whether consciously or subconsciously. Mm-hmm. Like, it's exhausting. And I think that's why people avoid therapy, because it is literally hard work. It is quite literally draining, mentally and emotionally. And I think it takes a lot of courage to start and to stay consistent.
Right.
And I've said this before, but like, that is holding a mirror up to yourself, and who wants to have to look at that and deal with it and face their own? It's not easy to be told about yourself. Nobody likes to be told about themselves.
Yeah, no.
Literally nobody likes that.
No, it's not easy.
Yeah, and to have to not only hear about yourself and your own flaws, but then to have to dig into the reason why you are that way, and it's something hurtful and painful that you're not acknowledging because you've just buried it. It's very exhausting. And so, but I think it's really rewarding and important work to do in order for self-growth, making yourself a better person, but also, like I said, breaking generational curses and making sure that us, the next generation of parents, like, we are the best, an even better version of ourselves.
Oh, for sure. I totally agree with that. No, you're definitely a therapy advocate. I love it.
I am. Everybody find your person.
Literally. Let's see what kind of questions I have. Do you feel like you struggle with emotional vulnerability? I cannot wait, hold on. Vulnerability. Ooh, child. Okay, I'm a little lit. All right, hold on. Do you struggle with emotional vulnerability because of how you were raised?
Actually, I do not. But I think I used to feel, because I'm a Cancer, we're very sensitive, we're criers, whatever. And I think as I've gotten older and done the work, I feel like I've embraced how emotional I am. And I've embraced crying because it's a release. And I think it is brave to feel your feelings and acknowledge your feelings in a world where people are too cool to do so,
Right.
or too traumatized to do so.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of how I've changed. Whereas like I've always been vulnerable in the sense of like being sensitive and being emotional, but I've more so started to look at it as a strength as I've gotten older. Because if I'm in tune with my own emotions, then that makes me in tune with other people's emotions. It makes me very empathetic and intuitive towards other people. And I personally like that about myself, and I think it's a strength because I understand the people around me and what their needs are and how they are and what makes them tick. And I do think that's a lot of times like why I'm a safe space for people. Like a lot of times people are like, yeah, I've never told anybody this, but I'm telling you. And I'm like, for the longest time, I'm like, okay.
Right.
But like now it's like I understand why, because I can empathize and whatever. So I think that's something I had to work through, was feeling like it was a weakness when handled correctly. It's a strength, but also at the same time, I've had to learn to be self-aware enough that like I can be overly sensitive. And also I'm the type of person that feels before I think. And so I take the time now to be alone and like process my feelings and ask myself, is this reasonable?
Yeah.
Or am I being oversensitive? Are my feelings valid, or am I being, I think a lot of times your feelings are always valid, but when you are an overly sensitive person, a lot of times it's like, okay, go touch grass
Right.
for 5 seconds, And so I think instead of like being reactive based off of my feelings, like taking the time to process them and kind of like add that logic back in is what I've worked on and had to learn. But yeah, I think I was at a point where, and honestly, more so like in my last relationship, where like I just didn't feel, and I never want to be like that, because I think, to my point earlier, like I think it is a strength. And if something devastating happens to me and like I'm not crying because I'm just suppressing it, that's not healthy, or I'm not sad, I'm just not feeling anything, or I'm processing it by being angry when in reality I'm hurt.
Yeah.
No, not healthy. So vulnerability wise, I feel like those are kind of the things that I've worked on.
I don't know. It's like with me, I feel like I was a lot more emotional when I was younger. But the older I'm getting, I feel like I'm not, I don't want to say I'm not as emotional, but maybe I can just like, I know how to handle it or carry it more. But I think before, a lot of stuff used to get to me very easily, and I would just like always be like sad or crying. But now I'm just like, I'm gonna thug it out. Like sometimes I do break down. Like I have those random times where I break down, but I can thug it out. But I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know where that comes from or why. Maybe because when you just have like so much going on, it's like, I ain't got time for this. I just need to like keep pushing through.
Yeah.
Which it's like, is that healthy? I don't really know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, to what we were talking about earlier, like, you know how I say last year I feel like I procrastinated, like I didn't focus on like making my content and my own personal goals enough. I do feel like I worked really hard on myself. I don't look at that as a win. I just keep focusing on the fact that like I didn't do other things that I set out to do, but like that is also important
Yeah,
work
for sure.
when you slow down and just work on yourself. Because to your point, life can get so busy, you don't got time to feel
Yeah.
your own feelings, deal with other people's feelings about what you're doing, what you're not doing, how you've
Right.
changed, whatever. Ain't nobody got time,
Yeah.
But it's important. So it's good at least that you are in therapy now.
Yeah.
So you are doing it. You are doing work, while still being busy.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think sometimes it's like, I noticed when I was getting like so caught up and emotional about things, it's like, obviously, like we talked about before, sometimes it's not you. It has nothing to do with you. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm like, I try not to like think so hard about things, because I'm like, it may not have nothing. It really sometimes has nothing to do with me at all. It's just like, that situation was not for you or that person or whatever that maybe you're going through. So I'm like, you know what? It's okay.
And as far as trying to work on not being as sensitive and also not being anxious, that is something that I honed in on, was like, a lot of times the way people are, the way they treat you, whatever, literally has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
They will treat the next person like that, and they treat the person before you like that, you know?
Right.
And even if it's a stranger in the freaking Starbucks drive-thru, they had an attitude with the person in front of you, and they will have an attitude with the person behind. So there's no point in taking it personal. They're
Right.
just having a bad day.
Yeah.
You know, so that's something I try to be hyper aware of, is like not taking things personal, because
Yeah.
it rarely is about us.
Right.
But also just like, I don't know, just kind of like, and I think it, for me, as I've worked more on my faith, it's just like relinquishing control.
Yeah.
It is what it is. It is what it will be. It is what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Because there's no point in like stressing or being sensitive, or like, if it doesn't work out with that person, it was not part of God's plan. And I
Right.
like find way more peace in that, and having that level of faith, you know? We're not entitled to anybody or anything,
No. Right.
you know?
We're not.
So if it doesn't work out, if it's taken away, I think that's just like part of being obedient
Yeah.
to his plan. So that's helped me like anxiety wise a lot. It's just
Yeah.
like, okay, it's not what you want for me.
No, exactly. Exactly. Like there's always better to come. That's why I'm like, I literally cannot stress about this.
Yeah.
Like better is coming.
Yeah. And sometimes I'm like, am I being nonchalant or emotionless about this? And maybe that's like, for me, the like
That's how I
juxtaposition, because I normally am so emotional. It's like, for me, when I'm like staying calm, or I'm just like, it is what it is, it makes me feel like I'm being nonchalant.
I know what you mean. And I feel like that, but then I notice like later down the line, it's just because like something better was already coming for sure.
Right.
And I feel like that's why like when you in certain situations or things, you're so at peace, because it's like God's got so
Okay,
much
this
better
wasn't
for
for
you.
me.
Exactly.
Yeah, this was not supposed to be
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah. So when I leave at peace in situations, I'm like, okay, it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's what makes me sleep better at night.
Yeah. He always has your best interest.
Absolutely. How do you unlearn survival-based mentalities and allow yourself to feel safe in relationships?
You know, one thing I talk about a lot is assuming positive intent. Because if you have like the survival mentality, or kind of like a more cynical mentality that person's going to do you wrong, or fight or flight, whatever, you're never going to allow yourself to get close to anybody.
Yeah.
And so, or you'll be very quick to snap, or maybe you'll take every little thing personal. And so assuming positive intent means, okay, I don't like the way that person said that, or what they said triggered me, but assuming they came from a good place with it. And that's where discernment comes in, because not everybody
Yeah.
deserves that. Some people are just negative and you don't deserve your time.
Right,
You
for
know,
sure.
but if you discern and feel like this is somebody that you want to be with, that you should be with, that loves you and cares about you, then that's something that I try to remember, as far as like taking things personal,
Yeah.
or like fight or flight. When I feel triggered by something, it's like, okay, maybe you didn't like the way they said it, or their tone was triggering, or whatever, but assuming that the intent was that they love you and care about you, and that it was positive, to me is something to work on.
Yeah. No, I think that's very well said. I think it's just, you have to kind of just get rid of all the negative thoughts and feelings, like just thinking the worst all the time. I think that's something I've had to talk through with some people I know that were mostly raised like on survival, because you always think the worst, because the worst
Cynical.
happens so much, right?
Yeah. You have a much more negative view of the world.
Yeah, you do. You do. So I think it's very well said. Just thinking positive thoughts,
Yeah.
no matter what, like you have to.
Yeah. Because granted, the world right now is terrible. Dating is terrible. A lot of people are terrible. But you will self-sabotage if you do find a good person and you don't assume positive intent, or whatever. You will argue all the time if you don't just assume, okay, they meant well in that moment. It just didn't align with maybe what would make me feel good in that moment. And that's when you communicate or whatever. But it's very easy in this day to have a cynical attitude about everybody because people are users, abusers, liars, manipulators, whatever. But you do have to give people a chance. Yeah. And assume positive intent. Otherwise, we're all going to be lonely.
No, literally. Like even situations with people that didn't work out. Like I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, he's a terrible man. Or she's a terrible person. It's like, no, like it was just that situation, that circumstance, that thing. You know what I mean? So I think, that's a good way to think about it because I feel like, the power of the tongue is so powerful. And I believe in that. That's why I'm like, no matter what, I'm still going to believe in like love and happiness and everything's going to work out. All that good stuff. Because you have to, like, that is so important. Yeah.
And I was just going back to the point about just like trusting in God's plan and whatever. It's just like, I feel like I used to really like take things personal when it didn't work out and internalize it. And it's like, if something doesn't work out, it doesn't make you any less amazing and phenomenal and whatever. Right. Like, we are literally not going to be everybody's cup of tea. We're not going to be compatible with everybody. But that one person not wanting you or being aligned with one person or even multiple people does not make you less valuable.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But I think that's something that, you have to remember because obviously nobody likes to feel rejected. Right. Or nobody wants to feel like they're not wanted. Yeah. So making sure that you don't internalize that and maintain that you are still not everybody likes caviar.
Right. I don't. It's disgusting.
Okay. So some people are going to turn their nose up at a Ferrari because they want a Porsche. It don't matter. That doesn't mean a Ferrari is not still a luxury vehicle.
Hello?
So, not internalizing if something doesn't work out.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's why like self-love is so important. Because, as long as you have that, it's just kind of like, I just wasn't your cup of tea. Right. And that's okay.
You have poor fucking taste, but anyways.
Right, flips hair.
You don't know what you don't know what taste is. You want McDonald's, and I'm Chick-fil-A.
Hello.
It's not high-end fast food.
Literally. Oh my gosh. Have you ever been in a relationship with someone who was raised the opposite way you were? And how did that affect your dynamic?
Not necessarily, but I think maybe the way it was processed was different. So like, I feel like I can lean more towards like the anxious side, whereas some people I've dated lean more towards the avoidant, emotionally available side. And so I've definitely been in situations where it was opposite in that way. And what I learned from that is I don't want to date anyone not emotionally available. So,
right.
And I don't at all anymore because it's triggering. Yeah. Like if that's a wound or something that you needed as a child, it surfaces as an adult. And it surfaces in the people that you choose to date or whatever. And I've definitely learned I need to be with someone who is comfortable feeling their feelings, can acknowledge them, can acknowledge mine, can validate my feelings, can validate their own, can talk about their feelings. That's something that I need. And so, this sounds bad. I've honestly learned I just can't date people like that.
Yeah. No, it's super hard. But, but not everyone is at that level yet. You know what I mean? Of just like their self-discovery. Yeah. Because, I think sometimes people still have the old, roles of what a man versus a woman is supposed to do.
Yeah.
Right? But now like this new aged being healed and emotionally available and being logical and all these things, like that is not something they were talking about back in the day.
At all.
Which is why we are where we are now. Mm-hmm. It's like, I ain't putting up with that.
Right. No. And
providing is not enough.
Exactly. And it used to be because women would put up with emotionally unavailable or disloyal, whatever, partners to keep a roof over their head or, that's not a thing anymore.
No.
We have choices. We have options now, and we can support ourselves, and we don't have to deal with those things. And so I think, a lot of men are having to do work on their emotional intelligence and vulnerability that they did not used to have to do.
Correct.
In order to not be alone. And that's why there's this alleged male loneliness epidemic now, because women are raising their standards, because who wants their peace disturbed with somebody's son who's like not emotionally available,
right?
No one anymore.
Yeah.
So.
No, for sure. And I feel like our generation is kind of the shift of it all, right? And I feel like,
yes.
Their dads, a lot of them, they're just kind of like, it's like a mirror effect, but they're really having to do the work now. Like it's totally different.
Yeah.
So it's just made dating just so much more interesting.
Yeah. But nobody's going to be perfect. Right. But I do think what's important is somebody who is self-aware and willing to do the work.
Yeah.
Because I honestly feel like it's an epidemic of people who are not self-aware. And there's no helping that person if they're not even aware of their own flaws or what they need to work on. But if you find somebody who's self-aware, knows they're not perfect, knows what their areas of opportunity are, and they're willing to work on it, that's a plus.
Yeah,
that's a good, I'm not going to say it's a plus, but that's a good thing.
Right. No, definitely.
Because I think when somebody's not self-aware, that's when you get into I feel like as a woman, that's where you end up in your masculinity, because you feel like you are, I don't want to say raising a man, but whatever. Like you can't be soft because you have to be on guard. And I don't like being like that, honestly. I really don't.
No. And a lot of men do bring out your masculine energy. And the older I'm getting, the more I'm like, that's when I'm like, okay, let me cut it right here, because I no longer want to be in my masculine energy when a lot of us have to be in our masculine energy at work.
I literally just said that the other day.
Yeah, I don't do that at home.
No.
It's exhausting.
No.
All day I'm in this,
Yeah, you have to be assertive and all of that at work. I don't want to have to be like that in a relationship. Mm-mm. I actually, currently feel... I was just saying earlier, it's just like, I can be very absent-minded when I feel safe.
And that's so beautiful.
And that because otherwise I'm the complete opposite. I'm like, this is, and like personality-wise, I'm not natural. I'm very organized, but personality-wise, I'm not a very assertive or bossy person. Mm-hmm, but I've noticed dating people that don't make me feel safe, that I start to act like that. Mm-hmm. And I don't like that. And I don't like to feel like that. It makes me feel masculine.
Yeah, for sure.
And no. And when I get like that, it's a clear indication that I don't feel safe or I cannot trust you to lead.
Yeah.
So I'm going to lead us, or I'm going to very least lead myself.
Right.
Because I cannot trust you to lead me anywhere.
Yeah.
And that's a waste of time.
No, it really is. It really is. The second where I find that shift in myself and I'm starting to talk to you crazy, I'm like, yeah, this ain't going to work. That's when you know, why am I talking to you like this and laughing in your face? Like, that is not okay. That is not okay. That's when I'm like, let me go.
Oh my God. The second your tone gets a little too disrespectful.
Yeah. It's like, I'm just being disrespectful and that's just not cute.
No. because the "are you dumb" is really wants to come out of me sometimes. And yeah, no.
There's no backseas after that.
No. You cannot take back your words. So no.
How do you feel like your upbringing shapes the way you form friendships? I think when it comes to friendships and the way, you know, the way you were raised shapes those would probably be more so, of course, how do you handle like conflict or issues with your friends? Say if you get in a disagreement, like how do you handle that situation? Are you going to pop off, or are you going to like sit at a table and talk about it? Or not like, you know, automatically block them, but you know, actually doing things the healthy, right way and not just saying something crazy, but then trying to be my friend yesterday. But it's like, the way you talk to me, I'll never talk to you ever again. Like that was completely disrespectful.
Yes.
Because imagine that's how some people do grow up.
And yes, and I also had this conversation the other day where, to your point about tone and the way people say things or cussing or da-da-da, they could be like, bitch, da-da-da, and be over it in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Because that's normalized to them growing up. Whereas to me, it's like, I'm not going to be friends with anybody that talks to me that way.
Yeah.
You know, and that goes for friendships and relationships. And I think when you grow up in survival mode like that, that stuff is normalized.
Absolutely.
And to me, in reality, it's very unhealthy. Like,
Yeah.
unless it's like, bitch, you're crazy. You know, not like that. Not bitch as in a term of endearment.
Yeah.
Like, you know, actually arguing. It's just like, to me, that's so unhealthy and not the type of friendship I would want to have. But I feel like people that grow up like that, they can literally cuss their best friend out and like an hour later they're good. You know, or I feel like I've known people who have literally like fought their best friend. And then it's like, oh, nothing. Like, oh yeah, we fought last year. It's like, huh?
Yeah. At your big age, like, no, yeah.
Yeah. And to each their own.
Yeah.
But to me, though, that's just not the type of friendships I want to have. So I think that, yeah, plays into it.
No, for sure. Like, and to your point, I think tone is everything. The way I was raised, where it's like, if I hear like your tone get more aggressive or more loud, then you're upset, you're mad.
Yes.
And so like, I immediately kind of like get into like protective mode. So when people kind of get like super aggressive with me, it's kind of when I'm like, whoa, like, why are you being so extra? Like, it's not that serious. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that's something I've had to work on with my sensitivity, is that some people just speak assertively or they speak passionately.
Yeah.
And it's not always aggressive or negative, but to me, sometimes the assertiveness or the passion or whatever, I register that as negativity.
Right.
And so that's something I honestly is like still an area of opportunity for me. And like, that's where earlier what I was saying about assuming positive intent is like, you know, I think everyone should be cognizant of their tone.
Right.
But I also have to take responsibility for the fact that I can just misinterpret people's tone, maybe because I'm hypersensitive or whatever. So, yeah.
How does being raised on love versus survival affect your views on money and financial security?
I think people that are raised on survival, I think they have a more, I don't think narrow-minded view of money per se is the way to word it. I think a lot of times, like the way we were raised, we see a lot more opportunity.
Right.
Than someone who maybe did not grow up like us, cannot even dream of certain things being possible.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that can play into the financial aspect, that mindset of how you can make money, what you can do to make money, what you can invest in to make money, how you can turn passion projects into money. Like some things that honestly are maybe on our 2025 goal list are things that other people could not even fathom as a possibility.
Correct.
Based off of how they grew up.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, I totally agree with that. Because I think sometimes even the thoughts or the ideas or the aspirations that I have, I feel like my parents would never. They're like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I also think there's a difference generationally, almost in like the risks that we want to take or getting out of traditional norms or getting out of our comfort zones, right? Like even starting this podcast and having certain goals for it and certain financial goals for it. It's like, I feel like earlier generations, that just would not be a thing. It's like, how are you going to grow corporately? And I think we're aligned where we have dreams to quit our corporate jobs one day and work for ourselves, you know? And I think that's definitely like our generation, I think, is kind of changing their mindset around the traditional American lifestyle.
Yeah.
You know, waking up and going to work every day. And you put your money in your 401k and you retire at 67, whatever it is. And that's it. It's like,
yeah, no. Life is done by then.
That's not the dream
No.
for a lot of us anymore. And so,
not at all.
Yeah, I think our generation is definitely kind of like eyes wide open to changing some of those norms and a lot of those possibilities. Like, you don't have to work a 9 to 5. Shit, you don't even have to go to college these days.
No, you really don't.
The possibilities are endless to make money, but you have to be willing to go against societal norms. Like, until recently, a lot of people, if you wanted to be a content creator as a full-time job and make a living, people would laugh in your face.
Yeah.
Now,
10 years ago,
now people see what influencers are making. And even still, influencers get clowned that they're making a ton of money for not doing a real job. But in reality, being a content creator, you are a social media expert. Depending on what type of content, you are a SEO expert.
Right.
You have to be depending on the content, you got to be a fashion stylist. You might need to be a makeup artist, a hair artist. Not to mention, you have to know how to speak to a camera. You have to have a decent personality. You have to be articulate. And when you're first starting off, you have to know how to edit. You have to know how to copyright, to write a caption. And people are mad that these people are millionaires off of this. They're doing a lot of people's jobs.
Yeah. A lot in one.
My job, we have a whole copywriting team. We have a creative team. We have a brand team for the photo shoots. Then the creative team edits the photos. Then the copywriting team writes the copy.
Come on. Literally.
And then the influencer team finds the influencer. Like, these people deserve the money.
Come on. It's still having to negotiate their contracts and what they're getting paid. Like, absolutely not.
It's a lot of work because, in reality, could you get paid $500,000 for a 10-second reel? Yes. But to me, that's back pay for all the work that you had to do to build a loyal audience when you weren't getting paid.
True. You're right.
You know?
You're so right.
I don't know. I digress.
No, you're very right. Like that, all this stuff, it just takes so much time. It takes time and it takes effort and it takes energy that a lot of people just aren't really willing to put in. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And I think, previous generations cannot even fathom taking that risk or going that route or doing something outside of the traditional norm.
Correct. Because to most people, it's like a 401k is safe. Yeah. Having health insurance is safe. And it's like, to me, it's like, that's just like the bare minimum.
It's quite literally no risk, no reward.
Literally. And it is interesting because now my question to you is, why do you think that, because I feel like, you know, people that are more so maybe raised, of course, with more of a financially, I guess, a better financially background, you know, maybe more so they are big dreamers and big thinkers and they kind of like really shoot for the stars, but someone that maybe was more so raised, you know, in a lower economic background is not. So why would you think that that other person would just strive to be the best and do the best and just step out and do all these crazy things? Because you think that maybe they like know that they have support financially if it fails, or what?
I think that could be the case for some people, right? Like if you blow your savings to start a business and you fail, but you know at the end of the day you can move back home, of course you're going to be more prone to taking risks. But also, if you grow up a certain way or you're around certain people that are achieving things, then you're like, why not me? But if you're not around certain types of people achieving certain types of things, that's not even going to be a thought in your mind.
Right.
You know? And it's like, if you are at a dinner table with millionaires or whatever, or if you go to school with a kid and somebody's parents is a millionaire and you go to their house, whatever, it's like, I want that for myself one day. Or I think depending who you are around, it feels much more attainable because you're right here.
Right.
Whereas you could be watching something on TV and dream about it and hope, but when you are around someone that achieved it, I think it feels a lot more, why not me? Why can't I? It feels much more, and you can talk to that person, you can get advice, whatever. It starts to feel like it's way more, like it's an opportunity, like it's possible.
Right. That's very true.
But and I think what I'm describing right now is literally resources.
Yeah.
Whether it's human resources, just getting advice from people, your network, whatever it is, like you can dream a lot bigger when you have the tools to make it happen.
Yeah.
And when you're around people that have made it happen for themselves. But if not, it's like, yeah, that'll never be me. And I could see that too, because you haven't seen it.
Right.
How do you know what's possible if you literally have not seen it?
Yeah, no, that's very true. Because sometimes I'm like, why do I dream just so crazy big? But I do think I surround myself with a lot of other big dreamers or people that have done that or are working towards that. So that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Which is why I think I'm really big on like, who I spend my time, my energy, and who I surround myself with because of those type of things. Great point.
What is that quote? Like this is not the exact quote, but it's like if you're friends with 4 millionaires, you'll be the 5th. Like,
period. Right. I love that. Have you noticed a difference in how survival raised versus love raised people navigate the workplace?
I think this can go both ways. I think sometimes survival raised people can maybe take things a little more personally, but I think there's less entitlement. Right? They're grateful to have a job, to pay their bills, and they're grateful for the opportunity to show up every day and work hard and move up. And that's not to say that people that grew up, in a household full of loved aren't hard workers, but I think when to you it's like do or die, I feel like you're more likely to work harder. Yeah.
No, I agree. I think you're going to climb the ladder. You're going to work your ass off versus someone that's more so raised on love. They're like, la-di-da-di-da. They may be a little more just like nonchalant about it because they're just kind of like, well, if this fails, I know I have the support possibly.
Yeah. But I also think sometimes if you grow up in survival financially, then that is the source of your motivation for everything. Yeah. And that's what it becomes about. And I think maybe people that were started off like filled with love realize at the end of the day, that's what life's about. And yeah, maybe there's less of a sense of urgency there, if that makes sense, but if you grow up with that sort of like lack, then yeah, strive harder. But I think sometimes maybe even those people are not the most pleasant to work with. Because if you grew up on survival, maybe you're not the most like emotionally intelligent or emotionally available, and maybe you're a little more blunt, who knows?
Yeah.
And sometimes those people aren't fun to work with either. Yeah, because at the end of the day, they might have a get shit done mentality because that's how they had to live. So who knows? I feel like those people too would probably not be with like the corporate shit. Like the corporate jargon, the corporate schmoozing. Like, I feel like people that grew up on survival would just not.
They're like, I'm not going to play these
They're not
these
with the
people's
fluff.
games.
They're not with the fluff. Yeah.
Because it definitely is a little, you know, it's a little bit of all of that.
Yeah. And I can also see, because even I can be this way. It's like, happy Monday. How was everyone's weekend? I don't care how your weekend was, Susie.
No, seriously, let's just
Like,
start the
I
meeting.
don't care. Like, let's get this meeting over with,
Come on.
you know? So,
Right.
and I get it, because sometimes, and a lot of the people I have work with what I genuinely do like, and I might
Right.
genuinely be curious how their weekend is, but a lot of people I'm just like, this is fake. Anyway.
Moving on.
Right.
Oh my gosh. How do you feel like you're consciously going to choose to raise your children differently than how you were raised?
I think when it comes to having children, listen, life be life and things happen, things are not always planned. But I think I would like, before having a child, to be in the as best of a financial place that I could be in, so that I wouldn't have to make too many sacrifices work-wise,
Yeah.
you know, to be away from the child. They say you're never ready, there's no amount of money, blah, blah, blah. But I feel like you can be as prepared as you possibly can be.
Right.
Or more prepared than I am today. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that would be important, because I wouldn't want to have to miss any milestones or whatever. And I also just think like choosing the right partner is really important,
Yeah, for sure.
because that's going to be your child's father, and they're going to be your partner in raising and shaping who that child becomes. So, and that's why I've always been fine to wait until I feel like I meet the right person, because who wants to feel like they're doing it alone?
Yeah, no, I couldn't fathom.
And I heard I don't know where I heard this, but it was like, choose the person, like if you had a son, choose the person where if your son was exactly like them, then that's who you should want to be with, you know?
I like that. No, I like that a lot.
I guess even your daughter, technically, but yeah.
Yeah. I feel like for me, you know, I think my parents were amazing parents. I think the only thing was that they worked a lot. So I just know I want to be more present. I don't want to say they weren't present.
Yeah, same.
But you know what I mean? Like
Sacrifices
I
had to be made sometimes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. You know what I mean? Like I wish, you know, I could have gotten the school lunches randomly, or got picked up early, or dropped off and picked up from mom and dad versus like daycare or whoever was dropping me off. So I just know I think I want to be a little more present for my kids, which is why like I'm working my ass off now. That way when it comes to that point, I can kind of just like pause a lot of this stuff and really just physically be there. Because it is like, you don't realize how impactful that is to just be able to just simply literally picked up, dropped off, or just seeing your mom or dad pick you up like at a reasonable time, and not, I used to be like the first kid at daycare, the last kid at daycare.
Oh, I have vivid memories of my mom sprinting in because
Girl,
like it was past the
late.
time.
Yeah.
And like the places would charge like $1 per minute that you were late. But yeah, she always did her best and like tried to make it to as many of my games as she could. But yeah, it's like, yeah, there's nothing like them being present, because there were some games that she couldn't make it to, and it's like everybody else's parents are there or whatever. I remember one time I was grown in college, and I went to college in New York, and when I first started college, my mom was living in Jersey, so very close. But then she had to move to Kansas for a job opportunity, and I remember, I don't know if she like missed a couple games or whatever, but like I feel like mentally, emotionally, whatever, I was just like struggling college. Being a collegiate athlete isn't always easy, whatever. And so I remember after one game, I literally hugged her and just bawled, crying. Yeah, because there's no replacing your parent, you know?
No.
So
Just their physical presence.
yeah, and that is priceless, so.
Yeah, it truly is.
Especially when you go to college away from home.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
That is your only feeling of home, when your parents like show up to a game or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
So that's like your only like feeling of safety or whatever. So
For sure. Well, I feel like this conversation was really nice today. We kind of just, you know, We went a little left, a little to the right, but hey.
A little left, a little right.
Well, that concludes this episode. We'll see y'all next week.
Bye.
Bye.